I always thought betrayal came from strangers, from people you barely knew, the kind who smile at you on Monday and stab you in the back by Friday. But I never, in my wildest nightmares, imagined it would come from inside my own house, from my own blood, from my daughter, Teresa. To understand what happened, you need to know where I was in life. I'm not some reckless teenager or a man in his prime. I'm in my late 60s, a retired veteran, living alone in the same house where I raised my 2 daughters after their mother passed away, the kind of house that holds more ghosts than people these days. Every creak of the floorboards, every photo frame on the wall, all of it carries memories heavier than I sometimes feel strong enough to bear. Retirement isn't all golden sunsets and golf games. Some days, it's silence so thick you feel like it's pressing against your ears. Some days, it's watching the mailman walk away while realizing that was the only human interaction you'll get until tomorrow. That loneliness makes you vulnerable. It makes you want to believe in people again, even the ones who've hurt you before. And Teresa, she had hurt me before. She was my youngest. Always the wild one. When her older sister, Emily, was home studying for her exams, Teresa was sneaking out the window with boys on motorcycles. When Emily got a scholarship to college, Teresa got arrested for shoplifting. When Emily built a life as a teacher, Teresa bounced in and out of prison for fraud, petty theft, and drugs. But here's the thing about being a parent. No matter how much disappointment your child brings, a part of you keeps hoping they'll change, hoping that maybe this time they'll mean it when they say, "Dad, I'm sorry, I'll do better." So when Teresa showed up at my door 3 months ago, suitcase in hand, saying she'd found God while in prison, saying she just wanted one more chance to prove she could be the daughter I believed she could be, I let her in. That's the curse of a father's heart. The first weeks were uneasy, but quiet. She went to church twice a week, helped around the house, even cooked dinner some nights. She smiled more than I remembered, though there was always something a little too sharp in her eyes, like she was watching me rather than just looking at me. One evening, we sat across from each other at the dinner table. She had made pasta, simple spaghetti with tomato sauce. I remember twirling the noodles on my fork and glancing up at her. Her smile looked perfect on the surface, but her eyes betrayed her. Too bright, too intent, as if she was waiting for something. That was the first time I felt unease crawling up my spine, but I pushed it down, told myself I was imagining things. "Dad," she said, twirling her own fork in her bowl, "do you ever think about how things could have been if Mom had lived?" It was such an odd question, out of nowhere. My chest tightened. "Of course, I think about it," I said quietly. "But life doesn't give us maybes. We play the hand we're dealt." She tilted her head, watching me with that too wide smile. "Maybe you've just been dealt too many bad hands." The way she said it was almost sympathetic, but there was something behind it, something I couldn't put my finger on. Later that night, as I was washing the dishes, I caught her reflection in the window glass. She was standing in the hallway, half in shadow, staring at me, just staring. And when I turned, she slipped into her room without a word. Little things like that kept happening. Strange glances, half smiles, questions that dug into wounds I thought had healed years ago. It felt like she was probing me, testing the edges of my patience. I told myself she was just trying to reconnect. After all, she'd been away for years. Maybe she didn't know how to bridge the gap. But deep down, a whisper gnawed at me. Something's not right. The turning point came one afternoon. I'd made myself a sandwich, simple turkey on rye. Teresa was in the living room, scrolling on her phone. Halfway through the sandwich, I felt this twisting pain in my stomach. It wasn't ordinary indigestion. It felt like claws digging into me from the inside. I dropped the plate, stumbled to the kitchen counter, and tried to breathe through it. Sweat ran down my face. My vision blurred. "Dad," Teresa rushed in. She put her hands on my shoulders, wide-eyed. "What's wrong? You look terrible." Her words sounded right, concerned, but her eyes carried something else, something hungry. I rasped, "Feels like my stomach's tearing apart." She pressed her palm against my forehead with almost professional efficiency. "You're burning up. When did this start?" I could barely whisper. "About an hour ago, after lunch, that sandwich I made." Her eyes widened to wide, and in that moment, I saw it. The flicker she tried to hide. Not fear, not worry, but excitement. "Maybe the turkey was bad," she said quickly. "I should have checked the expiration date." And then she smiled. Gentle, too gentle. "Don't worry, Dad. Tonight, I'll make you something light soup, something easy on your stomach." Her tone was soothing, almost angelic. But inside, alarms blared. Soup. It was such a small word, but in that moment, it felt like a death sentence. I forced a nod, masking my suspicion. "Thank you, sweetheart. You always take care of me." And she smiled again. That smile that didn't reach her eyes. That night, as the sun dipped behind the pines and shadows stretched across the kitchen floor, Teresa hummed softly while stirring a pot on the stove. The smell of chicken broth filled the air, warm and comforting. She moved, with a calm, almost graceful rhythm. And for a fleeting second, I wanted to believe in her again. I wanted to believe that maybe the unease was just my imagination, that maybe my daughter truly wanted to care for me. But then I saw it. Her hand hovered over the pot. Something slipped from her palm, a pinch of powder, fine and gray, dissolving instantly into the golden broth. She glanced over her shoulder. Thought I wasn't looking, but I saw everything. And in that instant, my heart turned to ice. I sat there at the kitchen table, staring into the steam rising from the bowl Teresa had placed in front of me. The broth shimmered golden in the lamplight, curling little wisps of warmth into the air. To anyone else, it would have looked comforting, homemade, nurturing, exactly the sort of thing a loving daughter might prepare for her aging father. But I couldn't shake the image burned into my mind. Her hand, hovering just a little too long over the pot. That faint, gray dust sinking beneath the surface. She thought I hadn't noticed. I forced a smile across my face, though my insides were tied in knots. "Smells good, sweetheart. Only the best for you, Dad," she answered quickly, sliding into the chair across from me. Her eyes glinted in the lamplight, sharp and watchful. I lowered the spoon into the broth, stirring slowly. My hands trembled, and not just from age. The silence between us grew thick, punctuated only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Each tick seemed to hammer at my nerves, as if the house itself knew something was about to happen. I lifted the spoon halfway, the broth quivering in its bowl. My throat went dry, and in that moment, I caught her. She wasn't looking at her soup. She was watching mine. A chill ran straight through me. I set the spoon down with deliberate care. "Not bad," I muttered, pretending to blow on it, pretending that I was about to take a sip. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Go ahead," Teresa urged, smiling too brightly. "You need to keep your strength up." That smile. It was the same one I'd seen when she was 17 and trying to convince me that the dent in the car had just appeared. In the parking lot, a smile she wore whenever she lied. I glanced at her bowl, untouched. She hadn't even picked up her spoon. The air thickened around us. My stomach still ached from earlier, twisting and clenching as if it remembered something my brain hadn't yet fully admitted. Was that sandwich poison too? Did she test me, just to see what it would do? My eyes shifted back to hers, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw it. Anticipation. A predator waiting for the trap to snap shut. I felt my hand clench around the spoon's handle. My mind screamed at me. "Don't eat. Don't you dare eat." But I couldn't let her see my fear. Fear would tell her I knew. So instead, I forced a chuckle, shaky and hollow. "You always were better in the kitchen than I was." She laughed softly, lowering her gaze, but I noticed the faint curve of satisfaction tugging at her lips. I tapped the spoon against the bowl, pretending to hesitate over the hot broth. Then I set it down again and leaned back, rubbing my temples. Maybe I'll let it cool for a bit. My stomach's still sore from earlier. Her smile faltered just a flicker, but enough to confirm everything. "Of course," she said quickly, smoothing her expression. "Take your time." But her hands, folded neatly on the table, were clenched too tight. I watched her finally lift her own spoon, dip it into her bowl, and take a small, dainty sip. She looked almost reluctant, as if she knew hers was harmless, but even pretending was a chore. Inside me, a war raged. On one side, the father, who had once carried her in his arms, kissed her scraped knees, told her bedtime stories. On the other, the man who had just witnessed his daughter deliberately poison him, which was true, could both be true. I stared down at the soup again. My reflection wavered in the broth, distorted by the ripples of steam. An old man's face, tired and betrayed. The room seemed to close in, the walls pressing tighter. Every sound sharpened the hum of the refrigerator, the steady tick-tock of the clock, the faint whistle of wind against the windowpane. My senses felt heightened, like a soldier waiting for an ambush, and then came the pain. Not from the soup, I hadn't touched it, but from memory. The twisting agony I'd felt just hours before returned to haunt me. I clutched my stomach, my body remembering what my mind struggled to accept. Someone had put something inside me already. Teresa gasped. "Dad, are you okay?" Her voice was sharp, urgent, dripping with concern. But beneath it, I could hear the undertone. That little vibration of eagerness. Like she wanted me to say I was worse. Like she wanted proof her plan was working. I hunched forward, gripping the edge of the table. It's nothing," I lied through gritted teeth. "No," she insisted, coming around to kneel beside me, her hands on my arm. "You don't look well at all. Maybe we should call someone, a doctor. Or maybe I can take care of you here." Her hands were too firm on my arm, her grip too steady. It wasn't comfort, it was control. I looked into her face, inches from mine, and saw it clearly this time. Behind the mask of worry, her eyes were alight with something dark, anticipation, victory, and it hit me like a bolt of lightning. She wanted me gone. Not just gone, dead. I thought of Emily, then my older daughter, who had built her life far from here, calling me once a week just to check in. She had never asked for money, never manipulated me, never betrayed me. And then there was Teresa, kneeling before me now, poison hidden behind her smile. The contrast was like night and day. I forced myself upright, patting her shoulder weakly. "I'll be fine, sweetheart. Just need to lie down a bit." She helped me shuffle to the couch, guiding me with exaggerated gentleness. And as she tucked a blanket over me, she whispered, "Don't worry, Dad, I'll take care of everything." The words should have been comforting, but in that moment, they felt like a threat. As I lay there, pretending to drift toward sleep, my mind raced. The image of the powder sinking into the broth replayed over and over, her too-wide smile, her untouched bowl. This wasn't my imagination, this wasn't paranoia. Something was very, very wrong. And for the first time in my life, I realized I might not be safe in my own home. The next evening, the house felt colder than usual, though the thermostat read the same as always. Maybe it was the storm brewing outside, the low rumble of thunder rolling across the sky, or maybe it was the storm inside me, the knowledge that tonight, something irreversible was going to happen. I shuffled into the kitchen slowly, pretending the aches in my joints were worse than usual. Teresa was already at the stove, humming softly, the same hymn she'd been humming the night before. The sound grated against my nerves, too sweet, too rehearsed, like a wolf singing lullabies. "Evening, Dad," she said brightly, without turning. She stirred the pot with deliberate slowness, then sprinkled in a pinch of something from her hand. Her movement was subtle, almost casual, but I'd been watching closely. I saw it, that faint dust dissolving instantly into the broth. My chest tightened. There it was. Proof. I forced a smile. "Smells wonderful." She glanced over her shoulder, her grin-wide eyes gleaming. "Just a little something for your stomach. I know you've been feeling off. This'll help." The smell of chicken and herbs filled the kitchen, but underneath it, my imagination, or maybe my instincts, swore it carried something else. Something bitter, something wrong. She ladled the soup into 2 bowls and set them carefully on the table. The bowls looked identical, steam curling from the surface, golden broth shimmering with flecks of parsley. But I knew. She slid one bowl toward me, her fingers brushing the edge as if to mark it. Then she sat down across from me with the other, her smile soft and patient. "Eat, Dad," she said gently. "You'll feel better." I picked up the spoon, my hand trembling. Every instinct screamed at me to shove the bowl away, to accuse her outright, to demand answers. But another instinct, deeper, colder, spoke louder. "She thinks you're weak. She thinks you won't notice. She thinks she's smarter than you. Show her, she's wrong." I lowered the spoon into the broth, stirring slowly. My reflection wavered on the surface, eyes sunken, face lined with years of service, sacrifice, disappointment, a father, a protector, and now, "Pray not tonight." As I lifted the spoon, I pretended to cough, setting it down with a shaky laugh. "Clumsy old hands," I muttered, grabbing a napkin. "Take your time," she said, watching me closely. Too closely. I dabbed at my mouth, then leaned forward, nudging my bowl ever so slightly to the left, closer to her. My hand brushed the tablecloth as if adjusting it, and in one fluid motion, practiced from years of chess games and sleight-of-hand tricks with my army buddies, I slid her bowl, toward me and mine, toward her. She didn't notice. Not yet. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give me away. My palms were slick with sweat, my throat dry as desert sand. I forced myself to look casual, to smile. "There we go," I said softly, nudging the bowls straight as if fussing over the symmetry. She lifted her spoon at last, dipping it into what was now my bowl. My poisoned bowl. Time slowed. The storm outside cracked with lightning, illuminating her face in a flash of white. She raised the spoon to her lips, blew gently, and took a sip. The sound of it, the faint slurp, the swallow, hit me like a gunshot. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. She set the spoon down, smiled at me, and lifted her own bowl again. "See, just like Mom used to make," she said, her voice honey sweet. And I wasn't listening. I was watching every flicker of her expression, every shift of her posture. I lifted my own spoon, dipped it into the harmless broth, and took a sip. The soup was warm, savory, rich with herbs, but it tasted like ash in my mouth, because all I could think about was what was swirling inside hers. She took another bite, another, and slowly, something in her face changed. It was subtle at first, a faint twitch at the corner of her mouth, a tightness in her jaw. She set her spoon down too quickly, fingers trembling just slightly. "You okay?" I asked softly, my voice as even as I could make it. Her smile faltered, then snapped back into place. "Of course, just hot." But her hand hovered near her stomach. My own chest ached with a storm of emotions. Part of me screamed to stop this madness, to grab her bowl away, to demand the truth, and drag her to a hospital. She was still my daughter. Still the little girl who once brought me crayon drawings of stick figure families. But another part of me, the part she had poisoned along with that broth, was silent, cold, unyielding. She had wanted me dead. She had put that powder in my food, not once, but twice. She had chosen her path. The ticking clock in the hallway grew louder, each second hammering the choice into place. Tick. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Tick. She pressed her palm to her temple. Tick. She reached for her water glass, knocking it slightly with trembling fingers. "Dad," she whispered, her voice strained. Something feels off. I looked her in the eyes then, really looked, and for the first time, I saw fear there. Genuine fear. Not of me, but of whatever she had put into that soup. The irony was almost unbearable. I leaned back, my spoon resting in the bowl, my face calm. Strange, I murmured. That's exactly how I felt yesterday. After that sandwich, her eyes widened, the color draining from her face. The storm outside cracked again, thunder shaking the windows. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came, just a shallow gasp, her hand clutching at her stomach. And in that moment, the trap had sprung. I sat in silence, watching the daughter who had wanted me dead. As realization dawned on her face, the predator had become the prey. But even as grim satisfaction pulsed through me, a deeper pain coiled tight around my chest. Because no matter what she had done, no matter how dark her choices had been, she was still mine, my little girl. And watching her suffer, even knowing she had brought it on herself, was a torment I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. The soup sat between us, steam fading, the air thick with unspoken truths, and the night was far from over. The sound of the storm outside blended with the storm brewing inside my kitchen. Teresa sat across from me, her spoon resting forgotten in her bowl, her hands clutching at her stomach. Her breathing grew shallow, ragged. She tried to mask it with a shaky smile, but the mask was crumbling. "Dad," she whispered, her voice tight. "I think something's wrong." The words echoed in my ears. I had spoken almost those exact words the day before, bent over in agony while she hovered above me with false concern in her eyes. Only this time, the roles were reversed. I leaned forward slowly, resting my elbows on the table. My face was calm, but inside, a war raged. Half of me wanted to leap up, grab her by the shoulders, demand she tell me what she had slipped into the soup. The other half wanted to let the silence stretch, to let her feel every ounce of the fear and helplessness she had planned for me. My jaw tightened. "Strange," I said quietly. "That's exactly what I felt yesterday after eating that sandwich." Her eyes flicked up to mine, wide, desperate, and in them, I saw a recognition. She knew I knew. Her lips parted, trembling, but no excuses came. No lies, only shallow gasps, her chest rising and falling too fast. She reached for her water glass, her fingers fumbling, knocking it against the table. Water spilled across the tablecloth, seeping toward the edge, dripping onto the floor. She cursed under her breath, a panicked sound. I stayed seated, watching, waiting. "Dad, please," she gasped finally, clutching her stomach tighter. I don't feel right." My hands clenched into fists beneath the table. The father in me, the protector who had once stayed up all night when she had the flu at age 9, screamed at me to help her, to rush to her side, call an ambulance, do something. But the betrayed man in me, the man who had raised her, fed her, clothed her, only for her to repay him with poison, remained cold. I heard my own voice come out low, almost detached. "Funny, you said the same thing to me yesterday, almost word for word. Dad, you don't look well." Maybe it was the turkey. She froze, her knuckles white against her stomach, her eyes filled with panic. What are you saying?" she stammered, but the words were thin, trembling. I leaned closer across the table, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I saw you, last night, tonight, the powder. You thought I didn't notice, but I did." Her face went ashen. Lightning flashed outside, throwing her features into sharp relief, the wide eyes, the trembling lips, the dawning horror. No, Dad, you don't understand." Her words broke off into a groan as another wave of pain hit her. She doubled forward, nearly toppling out of her chair. The chair legs scraped against the linoleum as she collapsed to her knees, clutching her stomach. And I sat there, frozen. Every instinct as a father screamed at me to move, to help, but every scar she'd carved into my trust screamed louder. She did this to herself. Tears stung my eyes. My hand trembled as I gripped the edge of the table. Watching her suffer was agony. But remembering the look in her eyes yesterday, the faint smile as she watched me writhe in pain, that was agony too. She gasped, crawling toward me, her hand reaching weakly for my arm. "Dad, help me." Her voice cracked on the word dad. It pierced straight through my chest. I stared down at her, my mind a battlefield. Memories flashed. Teresa at 5 years old, standing in the doorway with her teddy bear after a nightmare. Teresa at 12, crying on the front steps after her first heartbreak. Teresa at 17, smirking as she lied about where she'd been. Teresa at 25, her mugshot staring back at me from the evening news. And now, Teresa at 34, writhing on the floor from her own poison. I knelt slowly beside her, my knees aching against the cold tile. I brushed the damp hair from her forehead. Her skin was clammy, her eyes glassy. "Why?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "Why would you do this to me?" She sobbed, shaking her head weakly. I needed money, the house, your pension." I thought her words dissolved into a choking cough. My stomach twisted. She hadn't even tried to hide it. She wanted me gone for money. For my house, my savings, the scraps of comfort I'd built after a lifetime of service and sacrifice. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Her hand clawed at mine, her nails digging into my skin. Please, Dad, don't let me die. The thunder outside rolled long and low, as if the heavens themselves were waiting for my choice. I closed my eyes, took a long, shaking breath, and then, finally, I reached for the phone. The 911 operator's voice was calm, steady, asking me what the emergency was. I told them my daughter was sick, that she might have ingested something. My voice cracked as I said the words. As I knelt there beside her, watching her tremble and moan, I realized something cruel and undeniable. Revenge had come. Yes, she had eaten her own trap. But the satisfaction wasn't sweet. It was bitter. Bitter as the poison she'd stirred into my soup. The sirens wailed in the distance soon after, growing louder, closer. Blue and red lights flashed against the rain-streaked windows. Paramedics stormed in, lifting Teresa onto a stretcher, their voices clipped and urgent. I stood back, my hands shaking, my heart hollow. One paramedic glanced at me. What did she take? I swallowed hard. I don't know, I lied. Something she put in the soup. Their eyes flickered, but they didn't press. As they carried her out into the storm, I sank into my chair, staring at the bowls on the table. Steam still rose from mine. Hers sat abandoned. The liquid inside, untouched now, except for the poison working its way through her veins. The kitchen smelled of chicken and herbs, but to me, it reeked of betrayal. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure what hurt worse, knowing my daughter had tried to kill me, or knowing I had let her taste her own poison. The trap had been sprung, but the cost, oh the cost, was higher than I ever could have imagined. The ride to the hospital felt like a blur, though I wasn't in the ambulance myself. I followed in my old pickup, the wipers smearing rain across the windshield, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. The sirens cut through the night like a blade, leading the way through slick, deserted streets. My headlights reflected off wet pavement, and every time I blinked, I saw Teresa's face ashen, terrified, her body trembling as she gasped for help. I wanted to look away. I wanted to bury the image deep inside and never pull it back up again. But it clung to me, just as the memory of her hand sprinkling that powder into my soup would haunt me forever. When we reached the hospital, the ambulance disappeared into the glowing bay, doors swinging wide, voices shouting, possible poisoning, adult female, third. I parked crookedly, my boots splashing through puddles as I stumbled after them. Inside, the fluorescent lights burned too bright, and the antiseptic smell turned my stomach. Nurses and doctors swarmed around her stretcher, their voices clipped and urgent. I caught fragments activated charcoal, 4, stomach pump, labs, call poison control. They didn't even look at me. I wasn't her father in that moment. I was just another bystander, pushed to the edges while they fought to keep her alive. A nurse stopped me at the sliding doors leading into the treatment area. Sir, you can't go back there. I nodded numbly, my throat dry. I didn't fight her, didn't argue. I just sank into one of the hard plastic chairs in the waiting area, my wet jacket sticking to my back. The storm outside rattled the glass windows, lightning illuminating the hollow faces of strangers who sat waiting for their own tragedies to unfold. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. My mind spun in circles. What if she died tonight? What if I had let her? Would that make me any better than her? I pressed my palms to my eyes until colors swam behind them. Every sound, the squeak of sneakers, the ding of an elevator, the buzz of fluorescent lights echoed inside me like a drumbeat of guilt. Hours passed. At least, it felt like hours. Time bent in the waiting room, stretching cruelly, forcing me to sit with my thoughts. Finally, a doctor approached. His white coat trailed behind him as he glanced at a clipboard, then at me. Mr. Jacobs. I rose unsteadily, my legs stiff. Yes, that's me. He gave a professional nod, though his eyes held a flicker of weariness. Your daughter is stable for now. We flushed her system. It looks like she ingested a toxic substance, but we intervened quickly. She needs monitoring for organ damage, but she's alive. Alive. The word should have brought relief. Instead, it hit me like a weight, dragging me deeper into the ocean of conflict inside me. Thank you, I croaked, though the words felt heavy on my tongue. The doctor nodded, then added, the police will want to speak with you. Cases like this suspected poisoning were required to notify them. My heart lurched. The police? Yes, sir. They'll have questions, for both of you. And just like that, the storm outside wasn't the only one I had to fear. 2 officers arrived not long after, one older, gray at the temples, his partner younger, pied. Their uniforms seemed to pull the room tighter, every conversation in the waiting area falling silent as they entered. Mr. Jacobs, the older one asked, flipping open a notebook. I nodded slowly. We understand your daughter may have ingested poison. Can you tell us what happened tonight? I swallowed hard, my mouth dry as sandpaper. My hands twisted together, and for a long moment, I didn't know what to say. The truth clawed at me. She tried to kill me first. She poisoned my food. I only let her taste her own medicine. But saying it aloud would sound insane, like the ramblings of a bitter old man spinning tales in the dead of night. And worse, it would mean dragging my daughter into a pit she might never climb out of. My voice came out low, hoarse. We were having dinner. She started feeling sick. She collapsed. I called 911. The younger officer tilted his head. Did she say what she took? I hesitated. My tongue felt thick. She mentioned something about medicine. I don't know. It wasn't a full lie, but it wasn't the truth either. They scribbled notes, exchanged a glance, and one of them said, "We'll need to ask her some questions once she's stable enough." I nodded mutely. When they left, I collapsed back into the chair, the plastic digging into my back. My chest ached as though I'd run miles, though I hadn't moved more than a few steps. Hours later, they allowed me to see her. Teresa lay pale against the white sheets, tubes snaking from her arms, monitors beeping steadily beside her bed. Her eyes fluttered open when I entered, and for a brief moment, she looked like a little girl, again vulnerable, small, afraid. "Dad," she whispered, her throat dry. I sat beside her, my chair creaking. "I'm here." Her lips trembled, her eyes filling with tears. "I didn't mean." She trailed off, her voice breaking. "I thought I'd get the money. I didn't think it would go this far." The words twisted in my chest. There, it was the motive, raw and ugly. Not love, not anger, money. Her tears slid down her cheeks, and I reached out, brushing them away with a hand that shook. "You almost killed me," I said softly, my voice cracking. She squeezed her eyes shut. "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Dad." The monitors beeped steadily, indifferent to the storm of pain between us. For a moment, I wanted to believe her, to believe the girl I once held in my arms was still in there, beneath the mistakes, the lies, the greed. But even as she begged for forgiveness, I knew the truth. The daughter I had raised was gone, and in her place was someone who saw me as a dollar sign, a stepping stone, an obstacle. I sat there in silence, staring at her fragile frame. And in that silence, a resolve began to harden in me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Morning light leaked through the hospital blinds, thin and unforgiving, painting the room in shades of gray. I hadn't slept. I sat in the same hard-backed chair beside Teresa's bed, listening to the steady blip of the monitor and the occasional hiss of oxygen. The storm had passed outside, but in me, it raged louder than ever. When the nurses changed shifts and doctors murmured in the hallway, I barely noticed. My eyes stayed fixed on my daughter, the woman who had tried to take my life, and who now looked fragile enough to vanish if I breathed too hard. Her eyelids fluttered, and slowly, she awoke. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just stared at me, guilt and fear dancing in her eyes. Then, her lips parted. "Dad, please," she whispered, her voice cracked. "Don't let them take me." The words hung heavy in the air. I sat back, my jaw tightening. "You almost killed me, Teresa. You put poison in my food. Do you even understand that?" Her face crumpled, tears slipping down her cheeks. I wasn't thinking straight. I was desperate. After Mom died, everything got harder, and then the bills, the loans. She shook her head weakly, her hair damp against the pillow. "I just thought, if I could get the inheritance early, I could fix it all." I let out a bitter laugh, though nothing about it was funny. "Fix it, by murdering your own father." Her sobs grew, ragged and broken. "I didn't think it through. I swear, Dad, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I panicked. I leaned forward, my voice low and sharp. You crushed pills into my soup. You watched me raise the spoon to my lips. That's not panic, Teresa, that's choice." She covered her face with trembling hands. I know, and I'll never forgive myself. Please don't tell the police. I'll lose everything." Her words twisted in me, carving a canyon between my heart and my mind. The father, in me, the man who once cradled her as a newborn, who taught her to ride a bike, who stayed up late sewing costumes for school plays, wanted to protect her, shield her from the consequences of her mistakes. But the man she had tried to kill, the one who had stared into her eyes as she fed him poison, demanded justice. I sat in silence, listening to the beeping machines. Each beat echoed my own pulse, loud and unrelenting. Finally, I spoke. "Do you know what it's like to sit across from your own child and realize she values your money more than your life?" Her hands fell from her face, and her eyes locked with mine. There was no answer, no excuse that could erase the truth. She just shook her head, sobbing harder. "I would have given you everything one day," I said, my voice breaking. "Every penny I saved, every bit of property, every asset. It was always meant for you, and yet, you couldn't wait. You had to steal my life before its time. Dad." Her voice cracked. "I don't want your money anymore. I just want you to forgive me." Forgiveness. The word cut like glass. How could I forgive the daughter who had betrayed me so deeply? How could I look at her and pretend everything was fine? And yet, how could I not? The officers had promised they'd be back. It was only a matter of time before they came through that door with their notebooks and cold questions. And when they did, I would have to decide. Tell the truth and watch my daughter face prison for attempted murder, or protect her and bury the secret deep inside me. I rubbed my face with trembling hands, torn in two. Then, a nurse entered, carrying a tray of meds. She checked Teresa's vitals, adjusted the 4, and glanced at me. The detectives will want to see her soon. She needs rest, but she'll be strong enough to answer questions later today. The words tightened around my throat like a rope. Later today, the deadline. When the nurse left, Teresa reached for me, her hand frail and cold. Please, Dad, don't let them take me. I swear, I'll change. I'll take care of you. I'll never hurt you again. Just don't say anything. I stared at her hand in mine, feeling its weight, its weakness. This was my daughter, my blood. And yet, the shadows of last night loomed behind her eyes. When the officers returned in the afternoon, I was ready, or at least, I told myself I was. They came in with their clipped voices and serious expressions, asking permission to speak with her. I stood in the corner, arms folded, watching as Teresa fumbled through her lies. She told them she had accidentally taken the wrong pills. She said she got confused and didn't realize the dosage. She painted herself as the victim of her own foolishness, not the architect of a crime. I stood silently, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. Every word was a dagger twisting in me. The younger officer glanced at me. Mr. Jacobs, did you see anything unusual last night? The room froze. Teresa's eyes widened, her lips parted in a silent plea. In that instant, I had the power to destroy her or to save her. The truth pressed against my chest, desperate to be spoken. I wanted to scream. She tried to kill me. She poisoned my food. She doesn't deserve your sympathy. But the sight of her trembling hands, her pale face, her whispered pleas from earlier, it silenced me. My voice came out flat, heavy. No, I didn't see anything unusual. She got sick. That's all. The officers exchanged a glance, then scribbled in their notebooks. All right, we'll follow up with toxicology. For now, she's stable. We'll be in touch. And just like that, they were gone. Teresa slumped back against her pillows, her eyes brimming with relief. Thank you, Dad, she whispered. But I didn't answer. I stood there, staring at her, a storm raging inside me. I had lied for her, protected her, saved her from the justice she deserved, and yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't saved her at all. Maybe I'd only condemned us both. The officers' footsteps faded down the hall, their clipped voices swallowed by the hum of hospital machines and distant chatter. The silence they left behind was deafening. I stood there, frozen, staring at my daughter, the woman who had tried to kill me, the woman I had just lied to protect. Teresa leaned back against her pillow, her breathing uneven but calmer now, her face shining with relief. She thought the worst had passed. She thought she was safe. But inside me, nothing was safe. My hands trembled as I gripped the back of the chair. I had chosen to shield her from the truth, and the weight of that choice pressed down on me like a mountain. Teresa broke the silence first. Dad, I don't know how to thank you. Her voice was soft, almost childlike, the same tone she used when she was 10 and I had patched up her scraped knees. But this wasn't childhood innocence. This was manipulation disguised as gratitude. You don't need to thank me, I said, my words sharper than I intended. You need to understand what you've done. Her smile faltered, and for a moment, guilt flickered across her face. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a practiced look of weakness. I do understand, she whispered, clutching her blanket. I almost lost you. I'll never make a mistake like that again. I swear, a mistake. That's what she was calling it. Not an attempt, not a choice, a mistake. My chest tightened with anger. This wasn't a mistake, Teresa, you poisoned me. You looked me in the eye while you did it. That's not a mistake, it's betrayal. Tears welled up in her eyes. I know, Dad, I was desperate. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Her excuses twisted in my gut. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But the memory of that bitter taste on my tongue, the way her hands shook as she served me dinner, the hollow look in her eyes, it all screamed premeditation. Still, I couldn't undo what I had done. I had already lied for her, already given her a shield she hadn't earned. Now, I had to live with it. For the next 2 days, I barely left her side. Not out of love, at least. Not the kind I used to feel, but out of duty. The nurses checked on her. The doctors updated me on her progress, and all the while, I kept replaying the moment I told the officers there was nothing unusual. Those words tasted worse than poison. At night, when the ward grew quiet and the lights dimmed, I sat in that same chair, staring at her while she slept. I thought about her mother, my late wife, and how much she had adored Teresa. If she were alive, would she forgive her? Would she tell me I'd done the right thing, protecting our daughter no matter what? Or would she see what I saw, a daughter who had traded her soul for greed? By the third morning, I knew I couldn't stay in that room forever. When a nurse came in to change her for, I stood and stretched, my back aching. Teresa stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Where are you going? She asked, her voice groggy. Home, I said simply. Her face tightened. Home, but what about me? You'll be fine. You have nurses, doctors, you don't need me hovering. But Dad, she reached for me weakly. I need you. I shook my head, stepping back from her grasp. You don't need me, Teresa. You need to figure out who you are, without trying to destroy the people who love you. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I picked up my coat and walked out, the door clicking shut behind me. The house was quiet when I returned. Too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from Mintha, same chair where Teresa had once sat, stirring poison into my food with steady hands. It felt like a crime scene, and in many ways, it was. I poured myself a glass of water, the same ritual I had done 1,000 times, but it tasted different now. Every sip carried suspicion, every swallow a reminder of how close I had come to death at the hands of my own flesh and blood. I should have felt relief being home, but all I felt was suffocation. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked the halls of the house, each creak of the floorboards reminding me of years past Christmas mornings with wrapping paper scattered across the floor, birthdays filled with laughter, dinners where Teresa would chatter endlessly about her dreams. Now, those memories were tainted. I stopped in front of the family photo wall, my eyes landing on Teresa's graduation picture. She had been so proud that day, clutching her diploma, her smile wide and bright. I had believed in her future, believed she would build something good with her life. What had gone wrong? I touched the frame lightly, my chest heavy. The days that followed blurred into one another. I went through the motions, shopping for groceries, paying bills, checking mail, but everything felt hollow. I avoided phone calls from friends, too ashamed to explain. How could I tell anyone that my own daughter had tried to poison me, that I had chosen to protect her instead of myself? The loneliness gnawed at me. One evening, I sat at the table with a pen and paper, staring at a blank page. For years, I had updated my will carefully, making sure everything would one day belong to Teresa. But now, the pen felt heavier than ever. Should I still leave her everything? She had already shown me what my money meant to her more than my life. If I left it all to her, wouldn't I just be rewarding her betrayal? The thought sickened me. For the first time, I considered the unthinkable, cutting her out, not to punish her, not out of revenge, but to protect myself, even in death. She had already proven she couldn't be trusted with my life. Why should she be trusted with my legacy? I set the pen down, my hand trembling. It wasn't a decision I was ready to make. Not yet, but the seed had been planted. In the weeks that followed, Teresa came home from the hospital. She tried to act like nothing had happened, cooking meals, asking about my day, even laughing at old stories. But I couldn't unsee it. Every time she handed me a plate, my stomach twisted. Every time she smiled, I wondered if it was real, and she could see it too. The distance, the mistrust. One night, as we sat across from each other at the table, she finally said it. "Dad, you don't look at me the same anymore." I set my fork down. "Because you're not the same anymore." Her eyes glistened, but I didn't soften this time. I couldn't. "There are consequences to what you did," I continued. "Even if the police never know, I do, and I can't go back to who I was before." The silence stretched between us like a canyon. She nodded slowly, her lips pressed into a thin line. I understand. Maybe she did, or maybe she was just pretending again. Either way, the truth was clear. Things would never be the same. And as much as it broke me, maybe that was the point. The night air was cool against my skin as I stepped out onto the porch, the weight of months pressing against my shoulders. The house behind me was silent, but it no longer felt like home. It felt like a battlefield, one where the enemy hadn't come from outside, but from within. For weeks, Teresa had walked on eggshells, trying to regain some semblance of trust. She cooked meals carefully, smiled often, even offered to help around the house more than before. On the surface, she looked like a devoted daughter. But the silence between us told the real story. There was no trust left, no closeness, just two people pretending, and I was done pretending. The decision came to me one evening, as I sat alone in my study, staring at the stack of legal documents spread across my desk. My will. For decades, it had been simple. Everything went to Teresa. The house, the savings, the investments, all of it. But now, looking at her name written there, the ink seemed to bleed betrayal. She had already tried to take it all, to snatch her inheritance before its time. And I, fool that I was, had protected her from the law. But that didn't mean I had to protect her from justice. Justice didn't always wear a badge. Sometimes, it was written in ink. I picked up the pen, my hand trembling at first, then steadier, as the decision solidified. I rewrote everything. Teresa's name was gone. In its place, I directed the money to charities my late wife had loved, the Children's Hospital, the Scholarship Fund, the animal shelter down the road. Every dollar, every brick of this house, every drop of sweat I had spent working for decades, it would go to something good, something lasting, something my daughter could never poison. When I was finished, I leaned back in the chair, a strange calm washing over me. For the first time in months, I felt free. The next morning, I told Teresa. She was standing in the kitchen, humming softly as she buttered toast. For a moment, she looked like any other daughter caring for her father. But I knew better now. "Teresa," I said, my voice steady. She looked up, smiling. "Good morning, Dad." I sat down across from her. I changed my will. The smile froze on her face, the butter knife pausing midair. What do you mean?" I mean, everything I've worked for will no longer go to you. It's going to charity." The knife clattered onto the plate. "What? Why would you do that?" I met her eyes, my expression unflinching. "Because you already tried to take it once, and I won't give you the chance to try again." Her face strained of color. "Dad, please, that was a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. I need you to understand. I was desperate." "You weren't desperate," I said firmly. "You were greedy, and I can forgive a lot of things, Teresa, but I can't forgive someone who values money over life, over family, over me." Her eyes filled with tears. "So that's it. After everything I've done for you, you're just cutting me out." I leaned forward, my voice low and hard. "After everything I've done for you, Teresa, you tried to kill me. That's not something a daughter does for her father. That's something a vulture does when it's tired of waiting." She flinched as if struck. For the first time, I saw the mask slip completely. The fear, the fury, the realization that her safety net was gone. "You'll regret this," she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "One day, you'll regret turning your back on me." I stood, pushing the chair back. "No, Teresa. The only thing I regret is raising a daughter who thought she could betray me and still walk away with everything." I left her standing there, her tears turning to silent fury. The weeks that followed were tense, but something inside me had shifted. I walked taller, I spoke with more certainty. The shame that had been weighing me down since that hospital room had lifted. People in town noticed. My neighbors greeted me with smiles. My friends commented that I looked stronger, lighter. They didn't know the whole story, and I didn't offer it, but they could see something had changed. I was no longer the man bent under the weight of betrayal. I was a man who had faced it, survived it, and chosen dignity over despair. One afternoon, as I tended to the garden, Teresa came outside. She stood at the edge of the yard, watching me silently. I didn't look up until she finally spoke. "I'm leaving," she said. I wiped the dirt from my hands. "Where will you go?" She shrugged. "Does it matter?" I studied her for a long moment. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in spirit, a shadow of the girl I once knew. "You'll have to figure things out on your own," I said. "I can't save you from yourself." She looked at me then, her eyes hard, her jaw tight. For a moment, I thought she might lash out. But instead, she turned and walked away. I didn't stop her. As her figure disappeared down the road, I felt no anger, no sadness, just a quiet finality. The house was mine again. Not in name, but in spirit. I sat on the porch that evening, the sun setting in streaks of orange and pink across the horizon. I thought of my wife, of the life we had built, of the daughter we had raised. I thought of the man I had been blind, forgiving to a fault, willing to sacrifice myself to shield someone who didn't deserve it. And then I thought of the man I had become, stronger, wiser, unforgiving where it mattered most. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Justice had been done. Not in a courtroom, not through handcuffs or prison bars, but in the way that mattered most. I had taken back my life, my dignity, my legacy, and no one, not even my own daughter, could poison